بعقد الأشعار وفقه مالك وفي طريقة الجنيد السالك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Inshallah ta'ala, today بإذن الله, with observing the month of Rabi' al-Awwal, we begin our class with salawat. And to be fair, we should begin every inshallah, we will try to begin every class with salawat to bring in the barakah and the khair. Yani we always begin with the bismillah. Bismillah. Then we say alhamdulillah. We say Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Rasulillah. That's how we normally should begin what we do. Um, and likewise for the beneficial actions that we do, that we seek barakah in and that we seek good and khair in, we should strive to do the same. Today, inshallah, we're going to be um, we're going to be reviewing the sections that we covered previously, but also moving of the obligations and the sunan of wudu very quickly. And then we'll be diving into the mandubat, as well as makruhat, as well as yani the rest of the ahkam regarding wudu, and then we'll go into tayammum bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Before we begin, if you have a question about the previous class, what we covered, uh, you may ask, inshallah, and we'll try to answer it. If not, we'll carry forward بإذن ta'ala. Oops. Let's see if this helps a little bit because the camera is giving me some problems today. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's the ring light. Ajib. Try it one more time. This looks very odd. Okay. Hopefully this is a little better. Maybe we can just turn on some of the light. There we go. Okay. Let's review, inshallah, what we covered last class. We said that the actions of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, the Sunnah itself, is a very broad term, and it covers a number of actions that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam did, but also matters that he spoke about. And it's important for us to differentiate from his actions that which was obligatory and also that which was a recommendation, a sunnah or mustahab. Because what comes under obligation, we said, because if you miss an obligation, that's essentially the action itself is incomplete. But if you miss a sunnah or a mustahab, then there are other rulings for that. Right? The action is not incomplete, but there's rulings for that. And we said that with the concept of what is mustahab, right, or mandub, the offset of the 5 different types of rulings that the Sharia, the Hukm Shar'i, comes with, that fall under it include what is Sunnah Mu'akkada, or an emphasized Sunnah, Sunnah Rawatib, which is, like a regular Sunnah act that are praiseworthy, but they're not obligatory. We also have Mustahabbat. We also have Al-Adab and Fadila. Inshallah, I actually compiled a short list of some of these key terms. Um, we'll see about having them posted on the channel. I know the previous week's summary as well should be posted up soon. So I'll get right to it after this class, hopefully. Um, but when we look at the actions of the Rasul, they are divided into 3 categories. So they can either be legislative actions. So what he did, for example, the actions that he performed, were to specifically teach the ummah how to pray, how to act, how to do certain things such as Hajj or fasting or prayer. They could also be natural actions, right, that are just related to his human nature, such as how he ate, drank, and slept. And all of these things have rulings that come under it, and also specific actions that are that are that are not necessarily uh, unique to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and they don't really have a legislative purpose or a natural purpose. So scholars, they sometimes differ on how exactly to implement these specific actions. For example, such as walking to prayer by one path and returning by another. So up until this point, we've been talking about wudu, and we were covering the obligations of it, and they're fundamental and they must be performed as we've prescribed them. The order of listing these obligations in the poem, however, and what we've reviewed from Ibn Ashir, does not indicate the exact sequence, because he mentions dalk and he mentions fawr first before he actually mentions the niyyah. Um, and so it should be noted that that actually isn't the specific order for the obligations. However, it's fine, because what he was trying to do was keep the poem or the meter in line. So the first obligation actually should be intention. And yani rubbing and with dalk is usually mentioned towards the end. So the scholar, he makes it clear though, Imam Ibn Ashir, he makes it clear that there are 7 obligations to wudu. When we go into sunan, or the sunan of wudu, we also note here as well that there are 7. He says it's 7 sunan. We begin washing the hands, returning the wiping of the head, wiping the ears, rinsing the mouth, inhaling the water into the nose, exhaling it, and the preferred sequence of the obligatory parts. So with that being said, he said ibtida'an min ghasl al-yadayn, which means the beginning with the washing of the hands. So it's first recommended to wash the hands up to the wrist 3 times before inserting them into the vessel for wudu. And this practice itself is done to ensure the cleanliness, as the hands, they may carry dirt. And it's based on the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he advises washing the hands 3 times after waking up from sleep, saying that none of you knows where his hand spent the night. We mentioned this the previous week. We talked the previous class. We talked about the subtle, in other words, eloquent nature of how the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam implies here that the hands themselves may have touched impure areas during the sleep, and given the customs of that time, people may not have had enough clothing or enough resources to ensure that their hands weren't touching um, uh, yani, uh, impure areas of your body. So the recommendation of washing the hands applies when we're using a vessel with a wide opening from which one takes water for wudu. The problem today is that most of the time we're not really making wudu from a vessel. We're making it from a faucet or a bathroom, right? A bathroom faucet. You turn on the water with a button, or you move your hands under the faucet, or maybe you twist the valve open, and the water comes out. And so the practice of putting the vessel on your right is also that way you're not dirtying the water as you're washing. However, with that not being available, right, and having the ease of using a faucet, this ruling doesn't necessarily apply when you're using a faucet. So um, one should just wash their hands 3 times, right, and making sure that they're getting between their fingers. Huh? underneath the faucet. The second is returning the wiping of the head. We said the wiping of the ears is number 3. Number 4 is rinsing of the mouth. Number 5 is inhaling water into the nose, which is known as istinshaq, and exhaling it, which is known as istinthar. And number 6 is the preferred, or number 7 is the preferred sequence. So after detailing the sunan of wudu, then the imam goes into the mandubat. And we said for the mandubat, these acts are not necessarily obligatory, but they enhance the quality of the obligatory worship. For instance, mandub acts, they complement and perfect obligatory acts like wudu, salah, fasting, and other forms of worship. Thus, while neglecting mandub doesn't necessarily incur punishment from Allah, consistently neglecting all commendable acts could possibly result in reproach. So scholars like Imam Shatibi, they argued that the mandub can sometimes become obligatory. We've mentioned needed when it is needed to compensate for deficiencies in obligatory acts. And this is the quote of Imam Shatibi, like it's something for us as students and as Muslims who are trying to become literate in our faith, of like what exactly to look out for, because we want to perfect what we do. We want to have ihsan in how we approach the deen. And if we're not having ihsan in how we approach the deen, then this is going to be problematic. Because look at it this way. Nobody actually watches you when you're making wudu. Nobody knows if you've perfected the 3 times, if you've if you've used miswak, if you've these steps that we're about to read, or the steps of wudu, generally speaking, nobody is watching you. When you enter into the masjid, nobody knows if you've completed your wudu or not. It's not visible on you. But what is known is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala observes all of our actions, and He knows our deeds. He knows what we hide and what we have visible in front of others. Because of that, in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, we want to have honesty. We want to comply with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recommends, and achieve excellence or ihsan in every aspect of our worship. So, the first mandub act is the tasmiyah, is saying Bismillah at the beginning of wudu. And by saying Bismillah, which is specific to wudu, one does not, for example, saying Bismillah is specific with wudu, and it does not apply to acts such as like istinja, which is cleaning oneself after using the restroom. The Prophet ﷺ, he emphasized the importance of beginning acts of worship with the name of Allah, especially in wudu, to ensure purity in both action and intention. The second is to do wudu in a pure place, or makan tahir. The second virtue is ensuring that the place where wudu is performed is clean and pure, free from any physical impurity. This recommendation aligns with the qaida: what is considered impure in customary practices is considered impure in acts of worship. If a person would avoid using a place in everyday life due to its impurity, they should avoid it even more in acts of worship like wudu. So the cleanliness of the environment reflects the believer's respect for the sacredness of the act of worship. One of the problematic things that we have is, scholars speak about it, teachers speak about it, which is how we make wudu and bathroom in the same place, which is and according to what we have looked at, and the mandub of doing it in a pure place can be quite problematic. What's even more challenging is when a masjid doesn't follow these things. So when we build our masajid, we should build it with a separate wudu area in mind, and a separate restroom in mind. And the wudu area should not be in the masjid; it should be outside, because you don't know who's coming. For example, who is in a state of janaba, for example, and wishes to shower and clean themselves before entering the masjid. You don't know who, for example, entering into the masjid, you should be entering it upon wudu. You should come in and pray your tahiyyat al-masjid, so on and so forth. right? So you have a place for cleaning separate from a place of prayer. Likewise, a place for answering the call to nature, yani the restroom, separate from where you make wudu, because each place has its significance and importance and its use. The second one, yani if you end up doing it in a bathroom, if one must perform it in a bathroom, yani it's makruh, unless there is no other option. If there's no other option, then it's fine. If it's done in the bathroom and there's other options, it's makruh. In such cases, performing wudu in a separate, cleaner section is preferable. Bas. So if you can perform it in a different place, do so. If not, then khalas, then just finish your wudu in the restroom and may Allah forgive us. One thing that I notice that people do is they do it in the kitchen. They do it in the kitchen, and that's perfectly fine. You can do wudu in the kitchen, right? If you're worried about other like problems or issues that are related to that, yani, use your logic, use your brain. I usually tell people use your brain, right? Use your brain and think critically. Yes. Number three, which is quite obvious, huh? تقليل الماء, which is reducing water, and this is what is it called? Economizing water, trying to use it minimally. The Prophet ﷺ performed wudu with only a handful of water, or a mud, huh? And ghusl with 4 or 5 handfuls, a sa', which is known as a sa'. The essence of this practice is to avoid wastefulness. As Allah Azza wa Jal condemned extravagance in the Quran, He says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, indeed, the wasteful are brothers of the devils. Those who are wasteful are brothers of the devils, or like are yani in relation to the devils, yeah, like in their actions, in their hay'ah, are similar to the shayateen. Excessive water use may also lead to waswasa, whispers of doubt, which the Prophet ﷺ warned against. By using water sparingly, a person trains themselves in moderation in all areas of life. Because it's one of those things where you open a faucet, you don't even think about how much water you're using. You just turn it on and you use it. You could be brushing your teeth, the water's still running. You're washing your face, the water's still running. You're on the phone, the water's still running. You're not really thinking about how much water is actually being wasted. And in some places of the world, how limited water supply is. So it's a blessing that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you water to be able to make wudu with, right? And it's a blessing that you're able to purify yourself with. Imagine living a day without water. It's quite complicated. I'm not even talking about just not drinking water. I mean like not being able to use water. Imagine the amount of facilities that we rely upon, including the toilet, which uses water, including bathing, which uses water, including just day-to-day cleaning. It was said about when in Andalusia, when it was being taken by the Spaniards, they knew something. They knew something about the Muslims, which was critical, which was if you cut off water from the Muslimin, you've cut off their life. And they didn't literally mean that like you cut off their source of water to drink. You cut off water, and water is such an essential element to the life of Muslimin, of how we use it in wudu, in ghusl, in cleaning, uh, and so on and so forth, of the regular actions that we have reviewed of purification, we have reviewed of daily life, and so forth. If you cut off water, you will make the life of the Muslims almost miserable to the point where they will surrender. And yani, it worked in many occasions, and as we know, the history of the Andalusia, as it is today. لكن يعني Allah musta'ad. May Allah Azza wa Jal uh, yani give victory to the Muslimin wherever they are. Revive our ummah. Number 4 is using the right side of the vessel. So, which is yani putting the vessel on the right side of wudu. So the vessel of water, the container of water that you have, putting it on your right side. And this practice is based on the Prophet ﷺ's preference to start with the right in all matters. And this recommendation only really applies if it's practical. If the vessel is designed in such a way that placing it on the right is not possible, this virtue is not applicable. Number 5 is even and odd washing. So the fifth virtue is washing the body parts in either 2 or 3 rounds. While washing once is obligatory, the second and third washings are considered recommended. The author yani, emphasizing washing the parts twice or thrice together, which constitutes one virtue. Washing them twice without a third wash, does not fulfill the recommendation. Washing the limbs an odd number of times, meaning 3 times, is particularly emphasized. Following the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu. Number 6 is beginning with the right. البدء باليمنى بدء اليمنى, which is starting with the right side when washing limbs. So you wash your right arm first, then your left. You wash your right foot first, then your left. The Prophet ﷺ consistently emphasized this preference in all aspects of life. Yani, leaving your home, you leave it with your right foot. When you enter the masjid, you enter with your left foot, with the exception of the bathroom, which you enter with your left foot, as opposed to your right foot. Number 7 is using the miswak, which is a virtue of wudu, and it's done before the salah. And it's done before the salah. And you clean your mouth during the wudu. Yani, what I mean by before the salah is done during this period of time when you're making wudu. If one does not have a miswak or a siwak, using the finger can suffice. So you would go up, down, you go up, back, down here, back, up, this way. That's the miswak. Up, right, back, down, back up, down this way. So you make like an 8, sideways. And you go to the right, up first, down, right, left. You go up, right, down, right, left, up, down, left, and then done. Second, yani, the objective here is just to do the miswak. It's fine. You can do it in any direction. The obligation, or the sunnah, or I should say the mustahab, the virtue will be fulfilled as you do the miswak. The next, which is arranging the sunnah acts, the proper sequence of the sunnah acts of wudu. For example, rinsing the mouth should come before washing the face, and washing the hands should come before the arms. By arranging the acts in their appropriate order, one follows the sunnah of the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Number 9, which is performing the sunnah acts according to the obligatory acts. So the 9th virtue is performing the sunnah acts in conjunction with the obligatory acts of wudu. The author here is highlighting the importance of not neglecting sunnah acts or fulfilling the obligations, as they enhance the wudu and complete its spiritual and physical aspects. And there are benefits that we don't see to wudu. Wudu is known as husn al-Muslim. It protects the Muslim from unseen harm. The Sahaba, they used to always make wudu and be in a state of wudu. Whether they were in combat or they were going about their life, they would be in a state of wudu. Starting the wiping of the head from the front, meaning although wiping the head from any direction would suffice, beginning from the front is the preferred practice of the Prophet ﷺ. And 11 is interlacing the toes, or tashkil al-asabi', which is the final virtue of the mustahabbat, which is interlacing the toes during the washing of the feet. So like you would do with the fingers, you would just go between the toes, and you would finish that. Does anybody have any question about the mustahabbat? Fadila is the same as mandub. نعم. نعم. كل هذا is under mandub. طيب. After this, the author begins to talk about the disliked actions in wudu. The disliked actions in wudu. The disliked actions in wudu, he says it's disliked to exceed the prescribed number of times when wiping and washing. The discussion on disliked actions is mainly limited to exceeding the prescribed number of washes and wipes. The Sharia has set a specific limit of 3 washes for the limbs during the wudu. If a person deliberately exceeds this number, it's considered makruh. So exceeding 3 washes is number 1. Washing the limbs 3 times is the prescribed number, as we mentioned. If they do it 4 times purposely, it's disliked. If they wash it 5 times, it is even more disliked, and so forth. Washing the limbs 6 times may invalidate the wudu according to some of the fuqaha. However, if only one limb is washed excessively while the others are washed correctly, the wudu remains valid, but disliked. لكن هذا أمر فيه اختلاف, right? So we should note this. For the moment, it's disliked. Invalidating wudu by excessive repetition. If someone performs wudu repeatedly without any reason, such as performing wudu twice consecutively, without using the first for prayer or any act of worship, this behavior invalidates the wudu, as it is seen as a mockery of the Sharia. The Prophet ﷺ taught moderation in all acts of worship, including wudu, and stressed the importance of not exceeding what has been legislated. So following these guidelines that we have ensures that the believer remains aligned with the proper etiquette or adab in regards to acts of worship and avoids falling into excess or neglect. So when he says the disliked acts, he mentions the matters in regards to exceeding the prescribed number, and then he goes into the discussion of continuity. Continuity, which it goes into specific cases of how one may interrupt their wudu. So, because wudu, it's possible that it gets interrupted. There's some sort of interruption in your wudu. You may pause for a period of time. You may have a phone call. There might be like a million reasons why the wudu itself is paused. So if a person is interrupted while performing wudu and cannot maintain the continuity that is obligatory in the school of Imam Malik, the continuity of wudu means washing or wiping each limb immediately after the previous one without a significant delay. If a person is unable to maintain this due to some circumstance, like the water running out or being interrupted, the fuqaha have offered guidance on what to do. The first, if the limbs are still wet, when the person returns to wudu after being interrupted, they may continue from where they left off. If the limbs have dried, however, due to a delay, the person must restart their wudu from the beginning. And this typically means that it is a moderate time frame, which it takes for the limbs to dry itself. So, like for example, if it was a quarter of a second and the limbs dried because of some sort of weather condition or something like that, that was out of the ordinary, right? We would be taking with what is ordinary. So we would say, okay, it usually takes like what, 30 seconds for your limbs to dry? Less than this is the normal amount of time. So factors such as temperature, humidity, and individual body types affect how quickly limbs dry. So a reasonable, moderate standard is applied. What it takes for most people. There isn't a specific number. It's just like what most people would understand, like a minute or two, maybe. This is how long it takes for the limbs to dry. Okay, 5, 10 minutes. Okay. Usually it's around like probably like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, I believe. 4 minutes, 5 minutes for the limbs to completely dry and under regular conditions. At least with where we live in New Jersey in the USA. It's not a dry climate. It's like a moderate climate. So, um, does everybody understand the interruptions of wudu? Does anybody have any questions about this point? Uh, I want to learn Mālikī Fiqh. I have a few questions. The prayer, can we recite the ta'weez and the basmala and fard prayer? You don't recite the basmala in the prayer, like there's uh, you may recite it quietly if you wish. Like in the Malikis, they don't consider the basmala to be from the Quran. You'd say Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. You don't say anything else. Okay, let's continue. Allah. If one forgets an obligatory act in wudu, what is the hukum? If a long time has passed since the wudu was finished, you redo the obligation by itself. If a short time has passed before one remembers, you redo the wudu from and including the missed obligatory element. If there was a missed action in wudu, a missed obligation invalidates the salah. A forgotten sunnah does not invalidate the salah, although the sunnah should be performed by itself to be included for the next salah. So, if I did not wash my face in the wudu, and I went and I prayed dhuhr, I have to repeat the wudu and the salah. If I went and prayed dhuhr, and I didn't wipe from back to front, I wiped from front to back, I didn't wipe from back to front, what is the hukum? What is the hukum? Huh? Hukum is the salah is valid. I've already prayed dhuhr. Khalas, the time is, the wudu has been applied and I already prayed dhuhr. So what's the hukum now? I can just, as we have said, it doesn't invalidate the salah, but it should be performed by itself to be included in the next salah. So I go back, I just go from back to front, and I pray, and the salat al-Asr comes in, and I pray Asr. And the wudu is complete. The wudu is still valid. Then it was just a sunnah that was missed. It wasn't any obligatory part. So you just go and you make up the little piece of sunnah that was missed. If one intentionally drops an obligation and one changes one mind and wants to perform it, the ruling depends on the amount of time that has passed. So if a long time passed, the wudu must be started again. If a short time has passed, one performs the missing element and everything after it. If one intentionally drops a sunnah and prays, it is mustahab to do all of the sunnah and redo the salah if it's still within time. If it's still within time. After this, the author then goes into nawaqid al-wudu, nullifiers of wudu. The nullifiers of wudu, Ibn Ashir says, are 16. Urine, wind, continuous dripping. If it occurs occasionally, stool, deep sleep, pre-seminal fluid, intoxication, fainting, insanity, post-urine discharge, touching and kissing with desire, and doubt about purity and disbelief, apostasy. We'll get to all of this in a moment, inshallah. Nawaqid al-wudu. Naqid means to nullify something. That something here is nullified. What is nullified? The first, urine. If urine comes out of your body, naturally comes out of your body, it invalidates the wudu by itself. If urine were to come out of your ear, for example, urine were to come out of your ear, is this a natural place for urine to come out of? No. Right? No. So it's important to understand something, that with wudu, it breaks. Wudu is broken with two categories. It's either a hadath or a sabab. So if it's a hadath, this is an action which breaks wudu by itself, such as urinating or passing wind, as we mentioned. The sabab, which can possibly be sleeping, sleeping, which may provoke passing wind, or touching the opposite sex, which may provoke pre-ejaculatory discharge. Because touching or sleeping is not actually the act of something coming out of your body from a normal place. So that's why we would have to categorize it under asbab. So we said the first one is urinating. Number 2 is passing wind from the anus. Number 3, incessant flow or incontinence. We call this incontinence. Salas. And salas can be of urine, it can be of gas, it can be of pre-ejaculatory discharge, and it can be menstruation when over the set limit, which is known as istihada. And istihada is, so for incontinence itself, if it's easily treated, it breaks wudu regardless of its frequency. If it occurs continuously, it is not even recommended to do wudu. Some people, for example, they may urinate like the whole time. It's nonstop. Might have an illness where they release gas nonstop. This is a completely different person, completely different individual than somebody, for example, who releases urine maybe 2-3 hours at a time and then stops. And then it starts again. So if these 4 occur half the time or more from noon until sunrise, the wudu is not broken, although redoing it is recommended. But if they occur less than half the time, it breaks the wudu. It breaks the wudu. Number 4, which is defecation. Defecation meaning vomiting. Number 5, long or short deep sleep. If being oblivious, uh, uh, if one name is called. So, like for example, you slept for a short time, but somebody called your name, for example, and you didn't respond. This is deep sleep. But if somebody calls your name, or it's light, you hear a sound and you wake up immediately. This is not deep sleep. This is light sleep, and it doesn't break the wudu. A long light sleep does not demand wudu, but it's recommended. A short light sleep does not break wudu. It's ignored. Number 6, pre-ejaculatory discharge or madhi, which is a thin, transparent liquid that's caused by foreplay or fantasizing, and it makes it obligatory to wash the full length of the penis before wudu. Number 7, intoxication, regardless of the means. Intoxication, regardless of the means. Some people can be intoxicated with the halal. Some people can be intoxicated like through a halal way. Some people can be intoxicated through a haram way. Some people, like for example, if they eat a lot of bread, they might be uh, they might be like for example sick to like their body's not able to digest the proteins and the bread effectively, and so when it actually enters into their body, it becomes a form of like they're almost drunk off of it, intoxicated. It affects them. This is drunk with a halal means. Like they didn't drink alcohol. They were just eating bread, and a great amount of bread caused them to be intoxicated. Right? So these people, yani they're obviously not sinful. They can still pray. However, like they have to do their wudu. They have to do their wudu. Next, next up, we have number 8, which is unconsciousness, and this is one of the asbab that we talked about too. 9, bouts of insanity, including epileptic fits. This falls under it as well. Number 10, which is emitting prostatic fluid or wadi, which is a thick white discharge after urination. Number 11, touching or being touched, body, hand, or lips, skin to skin, or through clothing, if pleasure was sought, even if it was not actually found, or pleasure was found, even if it was not sought. Unless pleasure was not sought and not found, in this case, wudu is not broken. And there should be no touching between the opposite gender. Men and women should not be touching at all, unless if you're married or يعني or you're mahram. لكن non-mahram, men and women should not be touching at all. If there was like a handshake or something like that, politely deny the handshake. And obviously, anything more than that should not be something that you do regularly. And one should observe the utmost haya and or modesty in how they interact. Right. So if it's lowering your gaze for men and women, lowering your gaze, dressing appropriately, speaking appropriately. Yani the rules of modesty. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Modesty from the faith." If that's the case, then yani we should be very serious about modesty and haya and how we actually approach that in our daily lives. One can read more about modesty in any sharh of the of like the Arba'in an-Nawawi. The hadith on modesty is there, and any sharh would do. It would help you understand the ahkam in regards to modesty. Number 12, kissing skin is as above that we mentioned, but kissing the lips breaks wudu regardless. Number 13 is inserting the fingers between one's labia, but touching the outside does not. This is specific for women. Inserting the fingers in between, but outside does not. Number 14, which is specific to men, is touching one's penis with the inside, inside or the side of the hand. The side of the hand. Unless there is a barrier, even if it's thin. For example, if you had a piece of cloth and you touched your penis, this would not break your wudu. Or like a thin rubber, something like a glove or something. You're wearing a glove, right? And a latex glove. This would not break your wudu. Only if it's direct skin to skin with the bottom of the hand or the side of the hand. The back of the hand does not break the wudu. Number 15 is shak, uncertainty. whether one has broken wudu or not. This breaks wudu unless that thought occurs at least once every day. This person is mustankih or muwaswas, we should say muwaswas. And this individual, yani, we would say to them, خلاص, you ignore the waswasa that you have and you go and you pray. If every single day that they're getting like multiple times, they're like unsure about themselves and they have some OCD like symptoms that you would properly know it as, or they have some issues with this matter, you tell them, forget about it. Your wudu is fine. Just go and pray. Number 16, apostasy or leaving the faith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. If a person leaves Islam and later returns, they must renew their wudu. And some scholars recommended ghusl. About the doubt or the shak, if a person is uncertain whether they are in a state of tahara, it is recommended to renew their wudu. However, as we have mentioned, if they have shak, if they have waswasa, then they should not do so. They should not do so. They would just go and pray immediately. طيب, does anybody have any questions about this? About what we covered from the wudu? Because now we're gonna go into the conversation about um, cleaning impurities and the adab of using the bathroom. Maybe what we can do is set this for the next class. It's kind of like an awkward position because it's between wudu and ghusl, and it's this little section. Yani it's about a line or two, and that's about it from the author. But if you guys are available today, we can just finish this up, inshallah, and then the next class we'll do ghusl, the ahkam of ghusl. Inshallah. I'll pause for for a brief moment, and then we can move forward. If anybody has any questions. Alhamdulillah. طيب, let's hop into adab qada al-haj. First of all, look at how the fuqaha talk about this matter. They say the adab, or the character of qada al-haja, of taking care of your need. What is the need here? Using the restroom, the call to nature, right? And there is another principle that we have in studying the Sharia, which is that there is no modesty in teaching the rulings of the faith. So when we have to teach rulings of the faith that are essential and critical for people to know, such as using the restroom and the degree to which you have to use the restroom and cleaning and so forth, the techniques. This is all from the deen, and this is something that we should know, so that way we are using it in accordance to the sunnah and not violating any rulings. Okay, we're not going against the sharia and any rulings. يقول ويجب استبراء بخبيثين مع سلط ونتر ذكر وشد. All right, let's explain this part, inshallah. First of all, it's obligatory. ويجب استبراء. It's obligatory to purify from both filths. لخبيثين. What are the khabithain? Urination and defecation. Huh? Urination and defecation. What comes out of the urinary tract and what comes out of the anus. Then he says, مع سلط, gentle squeezing and shaking. ونتر. This line refers to istibra, which is the process of ensuring that all impurities are expelled from the excretory outlets, the urinary and the fecal outlets before performing wudu or ghusl. So the term khabathaini, al-khabathaini, I said khabithaini, forgive me. Khabathaini, it's been a long day, very tired. Al-khabathaini, which is the dual form of khabath, which refers to both types of impurities, urinary and fecal. So the poet here uses the dual form due to the differing sources of the impurities, and also to highlight them for us so that we know that these two things are what he's then he says along with squeezing and shaking the private part. Squeezing and shaking. Sult is squeezing, and natr is shaking. So what are we talking about squeezing and shaking? Because you're obviously not doing that with the anus. You're doing that with the penis. Okay? So what's happening here is that after after the male urinates, it's possible that there's still urine that's left inside of the penis. And as he goes about his day, this urine could come out and cause him to be in a state of impurity. And this doesn't address the actual need to clean oneself after using the restroom. So, in order to mitigate this issue, the Prophet ﷺ told the companions to do both salt and natr. Salt is to gently press the base of the penis. Ah, you're gonna take two fingers like this. You see my two fingers? Okay? The thumb up here, next finger down there, and you're going to just push from the bottom all the way up until you remove the the urine from that tract. Once you get to this point, then you shake a little bit to make sure that it's gone. And moderation should be observed in performing these actions. Do not squeeze too hard, do not shake too hard, because this could harm you and hurt you. And that's not the point here. The point here is to gently remove the urine from that tract. You are forgiven for the little drops after doing all of these steps and washing and cleaning yourself. You're forgiven for those little drops. So do not have waswasa about this matter. Just gently remove the urine from the penis and wash it afterwards. You would wash it with water, right? And it's allowed as well to use paper. It's allowed as well to use leaves. It's allowed as well to use rocks. So if you want to wash it or clean it with the dry or wet, it's allowed. Dry or wet, it's allowed. And I will get into this tafsir in a minute, inshallah. I just want to go over what the author says because the rulings in regards to this is a little bit specific, and I wrote a short article a while back about this, because I was teaching youth and they had a lot of questions about the author then emphasizes leaving off force, avoiding harshness, and observing moderate actions in terms of removing this filth, in terms of removing the filth from the penis. He then mentions istijmar. وَجَازَ الْإِسْتِجْمَارِ مِنْ بَوْلٍ ذُكِرَ. So istijmar refers to cleaning oneself with solid materials. Like what? Like stones, toilet paper, anything that can remove impurities. It's permissible to use this method for cleaning after both urination and defecation. Second, to take the toilet paper, for example, which oftentimes is a very light material, then to damp it with water, you're going to create a paper that's coming apart, and this is not allowed. This is not allowed. So if you're going to combine both here and remove one or the other, you have to ensure that this paper is very thick and it's not going to be the toilet paper, the whatever, it's not going to be coming apart while you're in the restroom. I say this because in the West, for example, it's common for people to like make the little balls of toilet paper, put it under the sink, and soak it with water, and then go into the bathroom and remove their najas. But what's preferable here is number one, keep a water bottle on you or some source of water for you to clean yourself with. Number two, if that's not available, then use the paper that's available to remove that najasa with. And if you want to ensure, use a thicker piece of paper. Find like the find what's it called, the paper towels or something that you can remove with. If neither are available, then you use the regular toilet paper and you remove the najasa, and Allah will forgive you for the little bits that are there. And when you get home, you can, if you wish to clean yourself further, clean yourself further. But make sure that when you're removing the najasa from your body, use the paper effectively. So istijmar, what is istijmar? Istijmar is cleaning oneself with solid materials, like we mentioned. While istinja is using water. And this is generally preferred over istijmar. But istijmar is still valid, especially when water is not readily available. This ruling applies as long as the impurity is not widespread amongst the immediate area of discharge. And the recommended pattern, the recommendation actually is to do istinja, then istijmar. Why? So that way the liquid is gone. So you would actually feel if there was any wetness still left on your body or on your clothing, and you would know that that's actually najas and not the water that you use to clean yourself. So the conditions for istijmar لا ما كثيرا انتشر, as Ibn Ashir says, which indicates that the impurity that has not if the impurity has spread greatly beyond the area of discharge, meaning if it covers a large surface area. Istijmar alone is not sufficient, obviously, because it's all over your body, so water must be used to remove this. It happens. People have accidents. People have accidents. They may urinate all over their body. They may defecate all over their body. It happens all the time, right? So in those cases, you want to make sure that you're using water, you're using wipes, you're using something that's going to remove this a lot better than toilet paper or leaves or rocks. A rock is not going to help that much. Does anybody have any initial questions before I do the deep dive on this matter? Let's see here. Oh, we have some questions from before. For clarification, missing fard accidentally. Short time. Wash that fard limb and continue. Long time, restart. Yes. However, if you've prayed, there's a different ruling. If you've prayed with that wudu, that where you missed an obligatory part, the wudu and the prayer are invalid, you have to repeat. Versus if it's a sunnah that you missed and you prayed with that wudu, the prayer and the wudu are valid, and you would just wash the sunnah part that you missed to complete the wudu. Bas. It is frequently half the prayer time in regards with salas. Could you please go over the rules on desire? Is frequency half the prayer time in regards to salas? It's from subh all the way to dhuhr, as we specified, right? Half the time or more from noon until sunrise. From noon until sunrise. If the wudu is not broken, although redoing it is recommended. But if they occur less than half that time, it breaks the wudu. Could you please go over the rules on desire when touching? The rules on desire when touching. Very easy. If pleasure was sought, even if it wasn't actually found, or if pleasure was found, even if it was sought. What is the objective here? If there is pleasure, you're remaking your wudu. If there is no pleasure, you're not remaking your wudu. Mashi? However, there's some exceptions to this. Obviously, kissing is going to break the wudu. The other question is it allowed to urinate standing in the Mālikī Madhab? I will get to this in a moment, inshallah. طيب, let's actually go over now the rulings in terms of urination and defecation and يعني قضاء الحاجة بإذن الله. Imam Dardir in Aqrab al-Masalik, he actually elaborates on this. He says the etiquette, there's a whole section, etiquette of relieving oneself. He says sitting with purity, covering one's private parts, relying on the left foot while raising the right heel, spreading the thighs, covering the head, and avoiding looking around. What is intended by adab or etiquette is the manners that are encouraged for the one who uses the restroom and is to purify from their urination or defecation. So it's recommended that he sits and then relieves himself. It should be in a clean place. If it is in an open area, one should be cautious to prevent the impurity from soiling their garments. What does that mean? You're camping. You're out there in the wilderness. It's an open area. Guess what happens? Wind happens, right? And so if you're standing and you're urinating, the urine can fall back on your clothes. If you're sitting down and you're urinating, you're squatting and you're urinating, the urine can fall back on your clothes. So this is why you should look for a place where there's some cover. Huh? In addition to that, you want to cover yourself when you're exposed like that out in the wilderness. People are around and so on and so forth, the malaika, the angels, you want to cover yourself. The place that he relieves himself at should be soft. This is very important. You shouldn't be relieving yourself on rocks. You shouldn't be relieving yourself on on marble. Huh? Anything hard or hard soil. La. It should be soft soil. Why? Because there's splashback. So when you actually relieve yourself, when you drop the najasa onto the ground, it's possible that it comes back onto you. The whole purpose here, guys, about adab al-qada al-haja is avoiding najasa coming back onto you. You want the najasa to go away from you, not on you. So one should look for a soft area that is soft, like soil or sand, and not hard, like a stone, to avoid splashing urine. And one should maintain covering oneself when lowering down to sit near the place. So when you're coming down and you're about to and you're about to use the restroom, you should not remove all of your clothes and then sit down. It should be where it's like a motion where as you are sitting down, as you are sitting down, you remove your clothes and then you're still covering yourself. Lakin what it needs to be exposed is exposed. Bas. Imam Khalil, rahimahullah, in his tawdih, divided the place for urination in 4 categories. The first is that if it is a clean and soft place, it is permissible to stand or sit, but sitting is preferable because it provides more covering. If the place is impure and soft, one should urinate while standing to prevent the impurity from soiling their garments. If the place is impure and hard, one should move away from it to another place and should not urinate there while standing or sitting. If the place is clean and hard, it is recommended to sit to avoid splashing of any urine. Imam al-Wansharisi, he says in his poem, summarizing this, he says, بالطاهر الصلب اجلس وقم برخو النجس والنجس الصلب اجتنب. Sorry, the writing is like all the way in the like all the way on the side. واجلس وقم انتعكس. جيد. So he says بالطاهر الصلب اجلس وقم بروخ النجس والنجس الصلب اجتنب واجلس وقم انتعكس. المقصود هنا, what he means here is sit with a clean and hard place, stand with an impure and soft space, avoid the impure and hard, sit and stand if it is covered. So what's a modern day example that we see all the time? Urinals and toilets, right? So if, for example, the porcelain of the toilet and a urinal, it would be considered a hard surface, right? So standing while urinating in these instances would be disliked. If one is to urinate into the water inside of the toilet, it's permissible to stand and it's preferred to sit because they're urinating into the water. You're not urinating onto the sides of it. So when you look at a toilet, do not urinate onto the porcelain while standing. You're going to urinate where? Into the water. And why do we mention this? Because it's very possible you use a public toilet and on the ground is urine and like feces. It's 100% possible. You don't know what's on the ground. It's always dirty, right? But you need to use the restroom, and there's no other place for you to use it, right? And you need to relieve yourself. So in that case, you can stand. It's totally allowed for you to stand. In this case, you just urinate into the soft area. What about urinals? They're not allowed to be used. Urinals are not allowed to be used unless if they're for whatever reason there's like an extreme need, like you are yani about to, may Allah protect us, about to explode from urine, and you need to use a place to urinate. So khalas, yani in that case, you urinate and make sure you clean yourself after using the bathroom. How do you do that? You take some water, and you just pour it onto your clothes and wipe the areas that are possible to have some sort of urination on them. Okay. The next question is how to sit. How to sit. If a person relieving themselves, should not lift their garment while standing, except in the bathroom due to the possibility that there may be impurities on the ground near his sitting. They should sit while relying on their left foot because it facilitates the expulsion of waste, even when urinating, as commonly observed. They should raise the heel of the right foot. So you're essentially squatting here, right? So on your left foot, you're going to rely on that, and then you're going to raise the heel, raise to the heel. So, yani your foot is on the balls of the feet, like where the toes are, just before the toes, where the joints come together. That right foot is up, right, and you're leaning on the left. They should spread their thighs apart while sitting, not closed. Why not closed? Because all of the waste is going to get onto your legs. You want to open. Look, the objective always is to what? Waste comes out, not back on you. Waste goes out, not back. Yes. So it's recommended for them to cover their head with a cloth or similar material. Some scholars have stated that even a small head covering, such as a cap, is sufficient, as the main purpose is to ensure that the head remains covered while using the bathroom. They should avoid looking around. Why do you not want to look around? Because you can urinate and move the najasa around. You don't want to do that. It's not a good time. Have a great time, right? You want to make sure that you're using the bathroom for what it needs to be used for. Um, they should avoid looking around while relieving themselves to prevent seeing anything that may harm them, which could cause them to finish before completing their need and result in impurity without fulfilling the obligatory act. Before sitting, it is advisable to look around and to distance oneself from anything potentially troubling and to bring peace to one's heart. In addition to this, yani facing the qibla also is from one of the things that we should be avoiding while using the restroom. And this is specific to when you're out there in the wilderness. However, if you're in a covered bathroom, this ruling doesn't apply. If you're in a closed space, the ruling doesn't apply. Like, and if you're out there in the wilderness and there's no barriers around you, you avoid facing the qibla. When you're urinating, you just turn to a 90-degree direction. So in the case of like the West, for example, right, like, or New Jersey, for example, if we say the qibla is northeast, if the qibla is northeast, and if you face northwest, your back is to the qibla. So you're going to want to face either due north or south, right? So that the qibla is on your side. Does anybody have any questions? I went through a lot of material here. What I will try to do is make sure that that's posted for you guys to review. Maybe it's a little short article that, or a little short like a message that we put on the Telegram channel, like a summary of the rulings in terms of Allah al-Hajj. And there's more to add. If one of the Tulab, they notice that yani, what we said from this majlis is not sufficient or not complete, please add in the comments. Please yani, let us know. Alhamdulillah, nobody's far from mistakes, especially this faqir. Yani, I make errors all the time. May Allah forgive me and accept from all of us, inshallah. طيب, إذن, next class, we'll go over the rulings of ghusl. With that being said, this is where we are going to wrap up class for today. I want to make sure I give the students some time to ask questions as needed, and to let me know if there's anything that I missed. None. So to answer, brother Samir, is it allowed to urinate while standing in the Mālikī Madhab? It's allowed if the surface is soft. It's allowed if the surface is soft and you fear that there is najasa on the ground. If the surface is hard, then one should sit. طيب. نكتفي عند هذا القدر. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. May He guide us. May He allow for this, for what we've said, to benefit us. And if we erred in anything that we said, may Allah forgive us, and guide us and give us the ilm that is sufficient and acceptable, and bless us with that ilm and allows us to to help others and to aid others with that ilm. Allahumma ameen. صلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.